responsible for any losses you may accrue from having weak hands. Where the haters at? Y'all bitches still ain't showed up. And now, right, we got Hex, flawless uptime. People thought this was a joke. Now they're mad at the chart. It's love. This is Whales Only. Glad you guys can make it out. I'm making some claims that are pretty outlandish, but I can back them up. Boom. End of story. There is no other crypto out there, so don't get it twisted. If you don't understand where you're parking your money, you're gonna pay the consequences for that, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. Boom. We're obliterating everybody, literally. There is nobody else that comes close to what Hex has done. Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. Yep. That's it. Yep. That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. These motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. I mean, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Yash deep, everybody. My God. Hex-Asians, bro. Everybody. Australians, man. Everybody gets me. Yo, when is it told you? Dollar told you. Everybody done told you. It's crazy. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fine Saturday. Just chilling over here, playing with this data. I kind of wanted to stream a little bit today. What's up to everybody in the chat? Hope everybody's doing good. Cause pretty obvious that everything is kind of unfolding how it's supposed to some extent. We don't necessarily know what the clowns intend to do, but the important thing to understand is that ultimately it doesn't matter what they intend to do, because what matters is that you understand that they don't control you, right? This is why what they do only matters in that so far as your lack of understanding of the system itself, right? That's why it's very critical to understand that, because that's really the separation of, at this point in time, and it's very sad to say, the people that didn't understand the things that were being said by people like myself 2-3 years ago, now they're on a clear path to what all of us were talking about, which is an unfortunate early death, because it's not a game. I've been saying it's not a game for a long time, and people's decisions have consequences. And I was actually streaming with Thop and them last night, and Torin and a bunch of people that were on, and it's kind of funny. Something popped up in my head as we were talking, and it's one of these things where, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Darwin's theory of evolution and all this shit that we know, right, is wrong as hell. But one thing that remains true throughout the test of time is that survival of the fittest will always remain true. And it just so happens that in the 21st century, the nerds alone are not going to win. No, you need to be a nerd and street smart, unfortunately. And there's just not a lot of us out there. Just not. So, Luckily for the rest of the world, the morons are dying off because that's the way the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. And yeah, it's going to be some of my family members as well. So it's not a call for celebration. It's just a reality check because this is how the cookie crumbles. It's not a game. You can pretend it's a game all you want. That's perfectly fine. Because at the end of the day, the decisions you make impact your life, not anybody else's. So the only time that it does matter to the collective society is when you're too moronic to understand you're being duped, right? Like Rona took off the way it did because people didn't understand they were being duped. That's simply what happened. Because as you see now, all that shit is like it didn't even happen. In fact, these motherfuckers are asking for forgiveness. I mean, it's comical, right? It's even more comical that people think that they can ask for forgiveness. I mean, that shit there is hilarious. Because, nah, you can't pretend to even ask for that. There's no way in hell. And anybody that sided with that and justified it in any which way is also on the shit list. You just can't go back from that. How? It's just not feasible. How do you go back from telling people it's okay for them to kill themselves? You don't go back from that. It's just not possible. Doesn't matter what you think. Just not. And these are the facts. So you got to come to terms with reality or just end up becoming a statistic like everybody else. I mean, it is not for lack of trying that people did what they did over the past few years with these streams and social media and just trying to be a voice of reason in a world of fucking psychos or in a world run by psychos, really. Right? And we're all seeing the clear cut consequences of those actions and those decisions that were made by random people. Right? I mean, people are dying because they did not take their life seriously. They thought somebody else gave a fuck. And the sad fact is that the people that do are not the people you think that do. I mean, think about that. It's just like I said as soon as I started streaming amongst the clowns in the community. What do you want a face for? The motherfuckers that lie to you every day show you their face. And they don't even give a fuck. And they're out here killing you, stealing from you, extorting you, doing all manner of shit to you. And you think that shit is okay. But you want to accost people like me that are out here preaching the good word, raising awareness, and trying to help their fellow man. I mean, this is what's actually going on in 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, as far back as I can fucking remember, really. There comes a time when society has to realize that they're fucking wrong about everything they think they know. And that time is here. All these people that are in positions of power have lied to you. They have no power. The power that they have, you give them because you're too willing to give it to them. You're too unwilling to take care of yourself. You are too unwilling to educate yourself. I mean, it's the height of stupidity that in 2023, I still see people acting like they don't know what the fuck to do. It's like, yo, you didn't see what motherfuckers was doing and screaming about for the past 4 years? I mean, some people are just not meant to survive. And that's the real crux of the issue. And it comes a point in time where you just got to let it go. You know, the people that don't want to learn, don't want to listen, that are still pretending as if anything that's happened in the past few years is real. You know, all those things, there's nothing we can do about that. It just isn't. No matter what you want to think or do. I mean, I got family members, man, that still act like that shit is real. And it's like, how can you even help people like that? You can't help people like that. They're destined to die quickly. And that's just the name of the game. There's nothing anybody can do for people that choose to not see the obvious. Because I'm gonna tell you what, even even little kids see it. Little kids see it. They might not be able to identify it and vocalize it, but they can sure as hell see it. And let me tell you something. Adults are seeing it too. Because if you haven't heard, people are not going to banks trying to get their money out. Oh, but guess what? And thank you for the super chat, Jesse James. These motherfuckers are finding out what I've been telling y'all all this time. Money ain't there. It's not your money either. So even if you got $100 in the bank and they don't want to give it to you, guess what? You ain't got it. And you're not getting it. And that's just the unfortunate situation we find ourselves in this century. Because it just so happens that we find ourselves reverting back to the ways of how things should be ultimately. Nobody should be telling anybody else what's best for them because nobody else knows what's best for you. Nobody is living in your shoes. So nobody can realistically determine what's best for you. But yet, as a society, we sit here and pretend that some people in some room somewhere that have all of these supposed qualifications meet the standard. Now, I don't know what standard this is because when I look back over my lifetime, all I see is failure after failure after failure after failure after failure after failure after failure. Cost of living is at an all-time high. Education is at an all-time low. Self-respect is at an all-time low. Self-awareness is at an all-time low. Interest in oneself is at an all-time low. We live in a point in time where people have the capability of learning and doing whatever the hell they want. What do? Sit on Twitter. Sit on Telegram. Sit on Netflix. Anything but be productive, honestly. And, ultimately, all we can do is blame ourselves. But if there's anything I know about humans is that that's never going to happen. Why would you take a day, a moment, a second to reflect on the fact that you fucked up? I mean, I tell my moms and them all the time, y'all fucked up. I don't give a fuck. Because you know why? It's true. Because even though it's just me and my damn self, at least I'm making an effort to raise awareness, to help others understand what's going on, whatever have you. At least I'm making an effort. People going out here pretending isn't doing anybody any favors. I've never pretended. Not since day one. I don't plan ever to pretend. Because guess what? That doesn't do anybody any favors. And the last time I checked, people like to live. It's kind of sad in many ways because all the things people are doing to ignore reality is exactly what they're going to lose. because they're choosing to ignore reality. So while people sit at home and pretend that nothing's going on, everything that they're dearly holding on to is slowly slipping away. And it's simply because they ignore or choose to ignore what's in their face. Because it's not for lack of looking. I, again, am not special. Nobody is special. It's just a matter of choice. And a lot of us choose to ignore what we shouldn't ignore. I mean, imagine all the times you regretted not buying Bitcoin, not buying ETH. I got plenty and many because I'm in that group that missed that opportunity in time. And I tell you what, if you were born in the 80s, late 70s, you've lived a life of nothing but seeing the world turn from one point to another. So if you are choosing to ignore what the universe is showing you, you can only blame yourself because I had to come to terms with that. And I'm not special. So why can't you sit down, put in some work, and become just as knowledgeable? I mean, in reality, become more knowledgeable than any and every expert out there. I mean, I tell you guys this shit all the time, and I'm going to repeat it. Every industry is littered with the same kind of people, regardless of the industry. Finance, science, quantitative, whatever. Life sciences, quantitative sciences, medical sciences, just all breadth of analytical endeavors, right? Like they take effort and time. Now, keeping that in mind, how is it that we find ourselves constantly at the behest of the wrong endeavors? I mean, it never fails. Every day that passes, society is saying it's okay for us to willingly commit really perpetual genocide on ourselves. Because what you don't understand in the short term is that while you think it's okay to kill off another race because it doesn't affect you, is that ultimately you're not just killing off another race of people, you're killing off that entire ecosystem because you're just starting with the people. And this is what humans have done really since as far back as we can remember or as we can read into history, really. Because there's a lot of things that are recorded, a lot of things that are not. But at the end of the day, we can see the ramifications of the decisions made. So there's not a lot that we need to guess on. And these are truths that are self-evident. There's no analysis required. So it begs the question, what the hell is going on? That these are the choices that people think are sensible to make. And who's making them? Because it's not me. It's not people like me. People like myself, such as yourself, whoever's upset with the present situation, they're the ones complaining. They're the ones pointing things out. They're the ones that are not satisfied. They're the ones that got the fire burning. They're the ones that are fucking lit and enjoying themselves at this point in time. Because we done all fucking told you. Doesn't matter the area. Because guess what? Knowledge is out there to be had. And I found myself explaining to supposed experts how viruses work, how the body works, how all these things that I'm not supposed to know because I'm not an expert, how they fucking work. Because the so-called experts they didn't care to know or learn. I mean, look, I never went to medical school, so I don't know what they teach them motherfuckers over there. But what I can tell you is that based on my experience in the real world with how the motherfuckers operate, they're out here to kill. And they don't realize it, maybe. But every time I've interacted with a hospital, it's been a hostile situation. Literally. It's never been not hostile because their decision making process does not coincide with human survival. It coincides with making money. And that's a fact. It's not an opinion. And if the past 2, 3 years didn't teach your ass that, well, then you're just fucking stupid. Plainly put. Because as I said earlier, I mean, at this point in time, there is no further debating anything. All these so-called conspiracy theories are obviously fucking fact. You don't gotta like it. A lot of people don't. But guess what? You don't fucking matter anymore. So if you don't like it, you don't matter. So guess what? It doesn't matter that you don't like it. Wow. Crazy, right? And it's one of these things, man. I am one of the few people that I know that have spent a majority of my life fighting this fight. I have no interest in anything except being left the fuck alone. But what you end up finding are a lot of others with this agenda that they have to do I don't know what the fuck. Because at the end of the day, nobody is high and mighty. Some people like to pretend they are. Some people like to treat others like they are. Personally, it's disgusting to me. Nobody is superior. Period. Some people put in work and others don't. That there is a difference between people. So where do we stop and where do we start? Right? Because that's what it always boils down to. Because nobody likes to find themselves in a situation where they're not supposed to be. But when you're making decisions based on things you just don't understand, that's where you ultimately put yourself. And this is ultimately why it's critical that you find yourself. There is no two ways about that. That's the way it goes. So if you find yourself in a position where you think something's not right and you don't know how you got there, odds are you put yourself there and you just don't want to accept that because we do it all the time. And this is how we come to terms with some kind of reality because things change. Nothing stays the same. So why do you think it's okay to not change when you find errors in things? Because we all do this. This is how we eventually make some change. Because otherwise, how would we know that there needs to be something changed? Right? I mean, there wouldn't be a need to know at all. One of the greatest things that it takes time to understand unless you're taught is that the universe speaks to you all the time. It takes time to learn to listen. It takes time to understand that you're not alone. Right? This is how a lot of us felt when we found Hex in the early days, that we're not alone. Because a lot of us are freedom seekers and truth purveyors. Right? All of us aren't perpetrating a fraud. And these are the things that some of us come to realize about others. And this is why it's important to grasp a person's character. because agendas are always underlying people's psyche. I mean, you gotta look around and see who does what and why they're doing it. A lot of people want to get rich quick, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong is not understanding that that's not a real thing. You don't get rich quick. You get rich if you get lucky, but how much of it you keep is what really determines a lot of what you're going to experience. And this is one thing that is very hard for people to wrap their head around. Because a lot of people like to pretend that things are just going to go their way and they don't have to put forth any effort or any thought process or anything really, whatever you want to call it. They just think that they don't have to put forth anything. Sitting on your couch, unfortunately, just doesn't make things happen for us. It just doesn't. So that's kind of why that TV thing exists. It exists so that you are consciously or unconsciously playing yourself. Now, I grasp it's hard for people to realize that that's what's happening, but that is what's happening. We are subconsciously playing ourselves by thinking that life revolves around just sitting down and watching TV. It's not to say that you can't watch TV, but that's to say that there is more to life than just watching TV. Because we grow up thinking that this is a normal thing. And this is really the problem. This is the inherent problem, right? There's nothing wrong with watching TV, but what's next? What's the purpose of existing, right? I mean, a lot of it is really just for escapism, right? Entertainment, because things are so putrid for a lot of us that that's the option that we take in all reality, right? This is ultimately what's happening. And while there's nothing wrong with escaping reality, there's something wrong with acting like that's a solution, because all it's done is carry things on a lot further than they should have. And that's a fact, not an opinion. When people are living in a people are living in a type of societal environment where the sociology is such that they don't determine their own fates, everything is lost. And this is where we're at. And this is now why everyone's individual effort matters so much more than it ever has. Because it's obvious what we're seeing. But what's not obvious is that we are not taking care of business collectively. I mean, all over the nation, really all over the world, wherever humans reside, we can see all the negatives that permeate whatever society you might want to take into account. Now, the question should be, why is it that we just let things fall off the wayside like they do? Because, in reality, it shouldn't. But somehow, they just continue to go down the wrong path. How is it that people want nothing but the best for themselves, but somehow the worst constantly happens? Hmm. It's almost as if we're just looking to create the worst possible outcome for ourselves, which is not realistic. Nobody does that, not even animals. And animals are thought to have little to no thought process. So, how is it that we collectively do this to ourselves? Is it really that we're choosing to do this to ourselves, or is it that we're just not realizing that we're not doing it to ourselves, which is what's really causing us to sit down and do nothing? Because when you think somebody's on it, no reason to act. And this is when I remember that famous line: the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making people think he didn't exist. Because this is almost what we see. I mean, we have a huge segment of global population that believes there is no evil in government. Government is incapable of such things. But yet this is all we see. Every war that's ever been perpetrated has been for no good reason, at least in our lifetimes. All of them. That's a fact, not an opinion. So, where does this leave us? This leaves us with few presumptions that we can make, right? And this is how we can come to the conclusions that we come to, because it's not rocket science, no matter what they say. This is real easy. Nobody decides to live in a world of shit. Nobody. Those are things that happen because they are willed to happen. And these are the realities that we got to come to terms with. Because how else are we going to rectify what's wrong? It's impossible. So it's not even about doing something magical. It's just about doing the basics. And that's what's magical, because we're not even doing that. There's a whole lot of pretending going on, but not a whole lot of real acting for your own best interest. Like, that's what's not going on. And that's what we need. Because you really got to realize, if everything's degraded to this point by the same people handling it, then you got to realize that there's not going to be anybody to rectify it. You're the one that's left. That's it. So here's the deal. On top of that, you got to realize that we're playing in a world where people think they have some type of authority. Because in crypto, nobody works for anybody, right? So because nobody works for anybody, a lot of people get kind of lost in this idea that what's the best way to put it? They kind of command something, right? If that makes sense. But we don't command anything. None of us command anything. We might command and sway influence. We might be able to sway influence, or persuade people to think a certain way, or change a frame of thought, or view something from a different perspective. But nobody really commands anybody to do anything else, right? So, keeping that in mind, how do we get to a point where we realize that we have to actually work together, but not to achieve our own personal agendas? Because this is ultimately the crux of the issue, right? This is what causes divisions. This is what causes factions. People deciding to do their own thing because they don't like what the collective is doing, or whatever somebody else is doing, whatever have you. And this is ultimately what we end up seeing. And that's unfortunately how the cookie kind of crumbles somewhat. Um, and it's not because that's the choice that people really want to make, right? It kind of ends up being that. And that's kind of the weird thing. When you look at the decisions people make in crypto, this is why we can talk about all these things and bring it right back to crypto. I mean, I spent the first 35 minutes talking about liberty, sovereignty, and you understanding that nobody can tell you what to do. Because if you don't understand that, then crypto is pointless for you. And I think a lot of people miss that because they really think it's a get rich quick thing. Oh, X is here, X is there, blah, 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 blah. And that's cool. Yeah, we're here to make money. Don't get that twisted. But do you understand what that even means? And this reminds me of this tweet I saw somebody put out the other day asking about, does the OA bother you? The mass of people don't even grasp how fucking markets work. So they don't really need to worry about third, fourth level, fourth order problems in markets when they don't even grasp how shit even trades. Like, people do not grasp how things are bought and sold. That's a real problem. Because you're out here making decisions based on an understanding that you don't have. And this is how people get fucking screwed. This is how people get screwed. I mean, right now we're watching in real time the evil, they, as many call them, perpetuate the 25th Amendment. They've put it in motion. And, we talked about this a long time ago. But the reason I bring it up is because of what they intend to do with it. Right? Because, again, you guys got to realize it's all a show. And if you're not awoken to that fact, then you're going to make a bad decision because it's all on you. So these systems that exist today exist because we allow them to, not for any other reason. So this is why crypto is important. This is why crypto exists. This is why understanding no financial intermediaries, that first line of the abstract of the Bitcoin white paper, if you don't get that, you might as well not be here. Just wasting your time and wasting everybody else's time because you're ultimately going to get wrecked. Go work a job, save some money, put that shit under the mattress because that's your skill set. If you're not willing to put in the work to actually learn how to think and succeed in this game. Because it's one of those things where people just don't grasp that things are not as kosher as they might seem. And them not being kosher is exactly why you have to be cognizant of what the problems and issues are. Because if you don't grasp them, you can find yourself in a pretty ugly situation like the people in a lot of those Middle Eastern countries. Those things don't happen by mistake. They happen by design. Just like 2008, 2007, these things happen by design. And it's important that if you're going to participate in these things called societies, that you understand that. Because bad things happens to everybody because everybody makes the wrong choice. It's not because uh anybody overpowers anybody. And I think that that's really the key to getting out of slavery. Like, it's called manufactured consent. When you're choosing to use dollars instead of anything else to transact, you're saying I'm complicit in this scam. And the problem is that everybody's saying this. So how can you say no? This is why education is so important. That's exactly it right there. Society dictates what happens in society. In 2020, we saw a branded group run around through our major Democratic controlled cities. And this is in the United States. And it might have even happened in Europe. I don't really remember. But point is, you had a group, a sanctioned, named group, run around all these cities causing destruction. It wasn't no hoodlums. It was groups that were hired and paid to do this shit outright. Burn cities, set them up for all kinds of shit. And nothing happened to these people. Now, you go rob something from a store, $1 worth, right now, and let's see what happens to you. Now, you might be saying, so what? We know there's a two-tier system, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure there is. And do you know why, though? Because the reason why is simply because you just have better things to do, apparently. This is the reason why there is a two-tier justice system. When you have better things to do, then hold those accountable that are supposed to be held accountable. Well, guess what? They're not going to hold themselves accountable. That's pretty stupid. Right? Doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. And thank you guys for tuning in. As we're 40 minutes into the stream, I'm about done with these charts, and then we'll get to them. Because it's kind of crazy to me when we see what we see out here in the dumpathon. Oh man, it's just incredible to see people not understanding what's going on. You know, to see people making the same mistakes that have been made on repeat since 2010. It's something to see. It's a sight to behold, because I really thought that this was going to be a layup for a lot of people. But the funny thing is, it's been a layup for those that like to spread misinformation. That's what it's been a layup for, because those people are having a field day with Hex. And the sad part is that a lot of the community supplants that traction of information because they're too stupid to understand they shouldn't engage it. And it's just true. You don't gotta like it, but it's the facts. Otherwise, nobody would know it exists. It wouldn't gain any traction. Pretty simple. And people love to ignore it. They love to think that they can go against some grain that they don't control or have any type of influence over. I mean, we see it all the time when Richard goes into these Twitter spaces. We see it. They don't even let him talk. And people pretend like that's some type of smart move. There's nothing smart about him going to waste his time to talk to fuckheads that aren't going to do anything, add any value, or anything like that. It's dumb. Period. And it's proven to be the case. How has it not? I mean, I don't see anybody showing anything different. So clearly it's not. And that's the whole point. Because the idea is, oh, adoption, traction, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure, sounds good. But guess what? Not how it's working out, is it? Not at all. Because it's not about Richard's outrage marketing. That's not what it's about. That works just fine. However, what doesn't work is when the community gives wings and numbers to other people that are just there to smack down Hex. And that's frequent. That is not infrequent. That's frequent. And that's the problem. We control a lot of numbers and we don't care enough to use it to our advantage. We do not. If we did, it'd be a whole nother world. It really, really would be. But because we do not care, we are indifferent towards ourselves. And all of these things that really shouldn't be, things end up being what they are. And it's not for a lack of trying, because there have been plenty of people that try to educate, try to point out, try to highlight, but unfortunately, Pulse Chain has really been a detractor for Hex. And the reason I say that is because it's allowed the barrier to entry in the community to be lowered to a level. I mean, there is no barrier to entry, really. Any schmuck can walk in here and pretend to be knowledgeable now. Pulse Chain is nothing but an ETH, whatever. It's just another layer one. Nothing complicated about that. Right? We can see that. However, the issue isn't that. The issue is that we as a community do not hold people accountable. Now, in a new world where you're supposed to be self-responsible and this and that and the third, when that's not the case, then it doesn't really matter what people say or do. People are just going to do whatever they want, and people are going to say whatever they want. And the thing about that is, when there is no cohesiveness in the desire for freedom, you're not going to get any freedom. It just doesn't matter who says what. It's just not going to happen. And this is why we have the societies that we have today. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's really, really not. And the sooner we stop pretending, the better off we'll be. Because, where do we go if not to each other for help? I mean, do you not hear these politicians when they go on their threat speech, on their threatathons? I mean, you got the so-called president of the United States threatening everyone in the nation by stating you need an F-15 to go up against the government. That's a threat if you don't understand that. That's not a joke. That's a threat. Real life. You have a grown man that's senile, apparently, in a position of power, threatening everyone supposedly under him, that's subordinate to him. And society just sits and continues thumbing through Twitter or Instagram or whatever the fuck. That's what's really going on. Right? That's reality, because that's what's really happened. You can't, you can't just dismiss that. That's what literally just happened like a day or two ago, right? So, you can pretend it didn't, but it did. And there's got to be consequences to that. But if people think that the people that are there backing that are going to provide the support, I mean, you got another thing coming. It's just not how it works. It's just never going to work that way. This is why things continue to go south for humans, not for evil people. I mean, it's not a coincidence, right? It can't be, because it's like I've explained numerous times before. Just going based on the law of big numbers, law of averages, etc. Like all the statistical premises that exist on this world. And this is how you know so many people are complicit, right? Because we're taught so many things that highlight the scam. But yet all those that do the teaching don't highlight it. All these invested parties don't highlight it. And we know they're invested because they're invested. It's not like they make it a secret. So if the people that are there to highlight and show us what's good, what's bad, yada yada, if they're there and they're not doing their due, then what hope do you have of those random people actually doing anything for you? I mean, you got to realize there is no hope. You have to do the doing. And that's what should make it easier. But it just doesn't end up being that way for some reason. It is what it is. People will come around eventually or suffer the consequences of their choices. And, it's one of those things where we really want people to make the right decisions, because some of us will, some of us won't. Now, I could foresee a day when society is just not what we think of society as. We could easily have uh, a split society, that we really could, just based on the fact that you have, and I don't know about you guys, but lately I've been seeing a lot of people just wearing masks, man. Just wearing them shits, like I don't know what they're saying on TV nowadays, but apparently is the brainwashing has gone nowhere. I mean, it's I don't know, but it's kind of crazy. But it's still out there. I feel like there's more mask wearing now than before. As crazy as that sounds. And I don't know why. Cause there's not like they're even making up any new lies on this shit. I don't even understand. Like what am I missing? But apparently they're doing some type of subconscious programming to these people, because I just see more people wearing face diapers around here anyway. Now, I don't know if it's the political tension, because we can see that these people, they're on their last legs, really. These people have uh very limited capabilities at this point, as far as what they can hope to achieve, right? Because so many people have woken up that the jig is up. There's no way they're going to achieve their goals. And that's just something that's kind of hard for some people to accept, but that's the way it is. They don't gotta like it, but uh, whatever. Cause that's just the way it's gonna be. Nobody's here to just not care about what's coming, and nobody's just gonna dismiss it, basically. Um, and that's kind of the thing, right? Nobody's here to just ignore anything. And a lot of people, uh, they're doing their own thing. They're not worried about anything. And it's not about a worry fest. It's just a simple matter of, again, having some type of moral standard. You know what I mean? Like, we can't continue to pretend that these depraved people doing what they're doing is right. It's not. I mean, you got these people out here thinking they could just take kids to these drag shows and all this nonsense. And, I remember the days when people used to just lose their shit over nothing. Now it's like, fuck it, who cares? I don't understand, but if people don't start stepping up and saying no more like they used to, it's just not going to be a good look for people, because it's not even about the funny thing is that there's nothing to do but just not comply. That's kind of the funny thing. People pretend like there's all this friction that's got to exist, and there is no friction. It's just a simple matter of knowing your rights and knowing that nobody can tell you that they, you know, you got to do whatever these randos say, because these randos don't have your best interests at heart, and that's obvious. And as soon as you remove that little bit of power from them, they're gone. They're toast. They gotta get violent. What do you think that means then? They've lost once they gotta get violent. You gotta push them to that edge. That's the only way to win this war, because this is not a typical war, right? These people are out here literally trying to sabotage people from existing. I mean, that's real. That's really, really happening. That's not fake happening. That's real happening, right? So that means that people gotta pay attention, be more vigilant, not succumb to lies and slander and just misinformation, because it's out there, as you guys can see. I mean, it's really, really out there. And this misinformation could cost you your life if you don't know what's true and what's not. I mean, this is where we're at. How crazy is that? We've gone to the point where people could lose their lives if they're not wise enough to know what's good information and what's bad information. We're seeing it. I mean, you got athletes of all sports dropping dead left and right. Athletes, what chance do you stand? It's crazy out here. So you got to come to terms with some kind of reality. And you got to start making some wise choices, because they're not going to make themselves. Right? They're just not. And that's something we got to come to terms with. Because again, what they do is that they just get you to not do nothing. And then you end up doing what they want you to do, which is not what you want to do. And that's the catch. That's the scam. That's how they get you. So, let's get to these charts. They're about done. think they're good here. Let's see. Because I mean, like even when it comes to Hex, there's so much that I don't know if people just forget it or they don't care or I don't know what it is, but people might want to pretend to care about their pockets for a little bit or something because this is the time to take advantage of what's going on. This is not the time to be playing these games that people are playing. And it's kind of crazy, but people are going to pay the price. And it's self-inflicted pain. That's what's crazy about it. But more power to those that think they know, because somebody got to do it. That's for sure. That is for sure. All right, let me get this shit set up. And there's one final chart that I'm still prepping that I want to show you guys, but I'll show you guys the main chart set for now. Give me a second, please. Yeah, so we know where the price is, right? Like 3 cents. Well, really, 2.5 cents. Told you guys a long time ago that the most lowest the price could go was like 1.5 cents, and we kind of did that. We went to like 1.7 or whatever. So close enough. And I mean, this was like once it was obvious that X was in a bear market. We went over that. So hope you watched that stream, however long ago that was, a year ago or whatever. Start off with these correlations. Now, this is the correlation heat map for the entire history of Hex. If you read across, this is Hex at the top. Hex is, of course, going to be a one-on-one correlation with itself. T-shares right at the bottom. Now, how you read this is you go across and then you go down, right? Across, down is Hex versus Hex. Across, down is Hex versus the T-share. Across, down is Hex versus ETH. Across and down is Hex versus BTC, right? And each cell will correspond to that respective crisscross that is made in these cells. So if you look at Hex versus Ethereum and Bitcoin, you see that the all-time correlation is less than 0.25 for both. Less than 0.2, but whatever. Same thing for the T-share. So while they might correlate from time to time, they do not correlate all the time. That's what that means, and here's the proof. And ETH and Bitcoin are clearly correlated, and you guys can see they coincide 83% of the time. And that's all these charts are saying. That's all that this says. So it's correlated 17% of the time. T-shares, Hex versus ETH and BTC. And that's it. No more, no less. Here we got staked Hex percentage in purple, and it's encroaching on 10.1%. Staked Hex in red, and it's just above 6.5 billion, 65 billion, excuse me, just above 65 billion. And of course, you guys know the prices are like 2.3 cents on this chart. But I mean, I guess the interesting thing is that the Hex price, I mean, the staking, the Hex has been staked, and the stake Hex percentage has just been on a tear for the past 200 plus days. This bear market has been 400, I guess, 90 days or maybe even 500 days by now. The last time I checked, maybe 2 weeks ago, it was like 475 days. Maybe even longer. I don't really remember. The point is, people are staking. somebody must be figured out something. What are you doing? Because this is almost a whole 1% move in staking percentage. Now for Hex, or I mean, I think for any coin that you can't just unlock and take with you whenever you want until you meet the end date of your contract. I think for any coin that's the case, with the type of lack of interest and gratification that people have and delaying it out there, then that's a pretty big move in a short span of time. Something you might want to pay attention to, because it's not like it's the OA doing it. So yeah, here we got the T-share rate, which already went to 25,602, if I remember correctly, something like that. But before that, this was the T-share rate, 25,594.9 hex per T-share, with no recent change from yesterday's crossover to today's crossover. That's all that means. But there was a change right after today's crossover. But that won't show until tomorrow's data pickup. But this is hold on. This is this is not even since big payday. This is really since uh what was this, 965, I guess September time frame, maybe August. It hasn't been that long. And 200 days or so. Because if you stress this out, 950 plus 200 is 1150. So let's just say it's been 200 days, and let's just flesh out the fact that in 200 days, the T-share rate has moved how many hex? 2,500. Now, doesn't sound like a lot because the price is 2 cents. But I'll tell you what, I hate to be the guy not racking up T-shares right now. Yeah, would not want to be the guy. Especially as this line just continuously slopes higher. I mean, if you've watched me make these charts long enough, or if you've been watching these, and I got some other chart there with the what do you call it? The averages for the hex payouts, and you'll see that this number only goes up. Now that's a function of how the T-share system is designed to work. And if you're not familiar with that, please educate yourself on that, friend, because that's really the whole premise of Hex. That's the entire reason it exists. It's for T-shares. Because it's a bonding token. It's a bonding curve token. That bonding curve design is everything. I don't want to beat a dead horse on that, but I talk about that all the time. It's really important that you get out there, do your research, and understand the significance of the bonding curve design token, especially where it's not just for the hell of it, like most of these other tokens. $638 was the recorded T-share price as of today's crossover. I guess it's probably a little higher by now because that dip has been bought naturally, as always the case with Hex. So let's see here. Here we go. The average payout per T-share for 21 days in blue, 34 days in red, and 55 days in white. And as you guys can see, pretty much since big payday to now, it's been consistently above 5.5. But before that point, that wasn't the case. As you guys can see, right after big payday, the payout started below 4.5 hex per T-share, and then grew after that point in time because of how the T-share system is designed to work. And this is why it's important that you understand how it works, because over time, and I pause for dramatic effect, over time, this number is only going to increase. So that means that if you're in it for a long time, you benefit for a longer time, right? It's kind of like being involved in a game where attrition is the winning strategy, right? When you're just got to be the last man standing, sometimes it's easy to win that game because the strategy is really not that complicated, right? It could be a simple one if you play your cards right. But if you don't, then it could be hell to pay, right? It just depends on how you want to play the game and how you see it because there's a lot of different things. It's kind of like when we say all the time how everybody's perspective matters because we all know different things, right? It's just like saying there's a million ways to slice a pie because there is, right? So if you don't understand how the T-share system works, do your best to figure it out because if you don't play it right, you're playing yourself. And here's just one of the many ways to see how the system works. If you've held one T-share since inception through today, you've received 5,805.5 hex per T-share just for being staked, just for backing how the system accretes value. Simple. Everybody wants to earn yield. Why wouldn't they? So during the bear market, cumulative change in holders 67,069. Promise I didn't type that in on there on purpose. It's just a coincidence. And I know you guys don't know that I don't believe in those, but this is a real one. Anyway, point is, somebody's stacking hex, even though people are dumping it. Now, this is what you call a transfer of wealth because somebody's saying, I don't want hex anymore. But somebody else is saying, I'm going to take it and then I'm going to stake it too. Because out of those 67,000 holders that we've increased, we've got 58,000 new stakers, right? And these are the facts. I mean, people can say what they want. This is what's actually happening on the chain. So, what FUD is that again? I'm not quite grasping the FUD. I don't even hear it. I don't get it. It's kind of whatever, as it doesn't matter. And that's one of those things that's very hard for people to wrap their head around, especially when they're used to high school level drama. But there's always going to be somebody there to kind of try to keep things focused. And you got to kind of keep things focused. You can't let yourself get guided or misguided. You can't do that. Because, again, it's going to lead you to make decisions you don't want to make. At the end of the day, people turn to the internet to gather information so that they could do what they have to do in real life, not for any other reason. Most people, that's why they're doing it. Sure, some people find money from the internet and all that, but you got to ask yourself, what's the real added benefit in that? Who's winning in that scenario, right? Is it you? Who? Who is winning exactly? I mean, you got to be realistic about these types of things because, how else are you going to attain success? It's not going to be by lying to yourself. You don't want to be that person. There's no room for success in that, none whatsoever. I mean, what could you expect to gain? Doesn't even make sense, right? I mean, think about it. Imagine being a boxer, knowing you're not as good as those other fighters in the boxing ring, or that you're going to enter with in the boxing ring. But you still have the wherewithal to lie to yourself to the point that you step in there and risk your life, all for no good reason, just to prove to yourself something that's not true. And in the process, you end up getting hurt because that's the way the cookie crumbles. There's no, there's no, there's just no prizes for lying to yourself. You just got to come to terms with that. There's no prize for that. There really, really isn't. And that's something that, a lot of people just aren't comfortable with that. But that's really how the cookie crumbles. And, this is why the universe tries to speak to you. It's not it's not just for fun. So that you can kind of snap out and kind of wake up, you know. Uh, and it's hard, but this is why we look at the data, so we don't got to think about it. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And this is probably one of my favorite charts. And shout out to Dosbon for asking me this because he just randomly asked me, and I just randomly did it. And yeah, we're at 117,000 and a half stakers versus only losing 32,000 and a half stakers. So that's basically outpacing stakers, or excuse me, winners to losers 4-1. Because that's how the cookie crumbles. And there's nothing wrong with that. We'll take it. Nothing wrong with it at all. Right? I mean, this is how you know what's actually going on. This is how you know what's actually going on. You got to sit down, look at the data. We don't need to make up stories. We don't need to be online fighting with buffoons that don't know anything about anything. I mean, we must remember the masses of these buffoons pretending that they're in crypto don't even know crypto. They don't even know the coin that they perpetrate to represent. And perpetrate is the right term because they sure as hell don't know anything about crypto. I mean, it's wild to see. These are the people that permeate the space. Actual minted inflation. This is not annualized. This is since big payday through today. We have not even reached 2 actual full years of annual inflation. You must remember that annual inflation is 3.69%. 3.69% times 2 is what? It's not 5.96. Right? It's a whole lot more than that. And that's the point. Something to take to the bank. Because even when you take into account the reality of inflation, and we're going to get into that, that's going to be how we're going to wrap this up. This is not annualized. If I annualize this number, it's probably less than 1.7% at this point. Because with every passing day that this number does not jump, that only compresses the actual APY that we see the system generate year over year. Because what it produces are inflation rewards, right? So we could call it either an APR or an APY. Now, the reason I say either or is because this is code and rewards are appropriate, and it is a rate that you earn in terms of a reward. You don't really earn anything outright. It's based on what the system generates inflation wise. So it's the code doing its own thing on its own time, and that's it. Interesting observation, T Bird. Hadn't looked at that. What I thought of was an ellipse, a bunch of ellipses, that elliptical relationship between the sun and the earth is what I was thinking about. But that works too. And again, we're talking about, and just so you can see it, let's do 3.69 times 2. 7.38% after 2 years. Or, I'm sorry. Yeah, after 2 years. Because it's 3 years total. First year was launch phase. We don't count that. We count after launch phase. So minus 5.96, 1.42% divided by 7.38. So we're 19% short of hitting that APY that we're supposed to be hitting, or APR that we're supposed to be hitting. I mean, people don't understand. This is a setup for a come up of major proportions if you're accumulating at this point in time. Simple as that. Now, interestingly enough, we've been seeing a lot of 7-figure, 8-figure and up hex stakes being made for 40 days or so, 30 days or so. We had a 2 billion one made by the Godwell or so, and we can see the imprint on that one right here. This was that 2 billion plus hex stake that was made around day 1120. And that one was 45 days or so. Yeah, so around over here, day 1160, we'll be able to see what's going to happen with that, because the system is definitely going to ratchet back higher, because the staking length is going to go back up, because that's going to be 2 billion less on a short duration. So the question is going to be, what's going to happen with that 2 billion hex? Odds are it's not going to exit the system, but we don't know what the restaking could be. So we'll just have to wait and see. Average staking length continues to creep down, of course, because as I was saying moments ago, you've been having a lot of 8-figure, 30 to 40-day stakes being made by people in Hex. And this is probably the most bullish chart in the chart deck, which is why I saved it for last. We got the cumulative change in total shares, total T shares at basically 500,000. And there is approximately 10 million shares or so. I don't really know. Hold on. I should know. Let me get that number for you guys real quick. Next. Total. Yeah. Come on. Yeah, so we've lost 500,000 shares, and right now we are at 10.29 million T shares. So pretty bullish. Pretty bullish. And this is from big payday to now. So interestingly enough, you've had less T shares be created, which in turn has ratcheted up the payout per T-share, because each individual T-share is going to be allotted whatever the system produces. So if there's less T-shares to go around, those T-shares are going to receive more hex. That's a function of attrition, last man standing type of scenario. Just because you happen to be around, that hex went to you. Not rocket science. It's just how it works. So, this is what's important to understand. 500,000 T-shares gone since big payday to now. Payout per T-share, however, goes up, doesn't go down. Right? These are the facts. Now, it's easy to say, oh, I can just buy the dip, blase blah, and sell the top. Sure you can. But what's the guarantee that you can actually do that successfully? I mean, a lot of people jacked it up and didn't do it right. Thought they had it figured out, but did not. And that's what it's all about. About having it figured out and not having to guess. Guessing is not a strategy for success. Being methodical, being long term, being diligent, those are the kinds of things that lead to success. And not taking no for an answer and quitting on yourself. I mean, for sure, that is not a strategy for success. Uh, I'm and just as an example, I'm here producing charts in Python, and I was not ever gonna learn it, and I just said no, I got to, and that's just how it goes. You got to progress. You can't stay static. That's not a recipe for success. So that's on you to determine how you're gonna make that happen, right? But you got to do something, because there is no other way. It's not gonna just be done for you, right? If it was only that easy, right? But it's not. So, let's see. Six, let me do one more. Add it to the bunch for you guys to check out. And then we'll move on to, what was I gonna do? Hmm, cannot remember what it was I was gonna show you guys. Damn. If anybody can remember what I said earlier, please remind me. That we were gonna finish. Yes, the exchanges and how there's really more crypto floating around than they say. Because you guys got to understand, these centralized exchanges aren't helping. Accepting the role of fiat is the problem. And the sooner people learn that, the better off that they'll be. It's simply that. It's not anything more than, because here we are with all this information. We're armed to the hip with information. We're armed to the hip with the ability to access it, because it can't even be hidden. And people choose to disregard said information because it's out there. It's not like you got to go searching for it or anything like that, because you don't. But even like that, You know, people choose pain. And it's interesting. This is real interesting when you think about that. Because it begs the question, why? Why do people choose pain? And, you know, I wish I knew, but I just think it's the lack of clarity surrounding the fact that that's what people are choosing. That's honestly what I think it is. Because I don't think people willingly want to choose pain. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. Who knows? Um, it's fair to guess that that's probably not the case because, you know, who really wants to choose self destruction? Like to think that's not the case. But you never know, right? You really never know. All right, let's see if this damn thing worked. Nope. Let's see. Okay, that's not working. I don't know why. All right, I'll just show it another way. No biggie. Give me a second, guys. I basically want you guys to see the level of demand at this point in time for Hex in various ways. So it'll be interesting, an interesting chart for you guys to get your eyes on. Give me 1 second. Let me just try to. You know what? Yeah, let me do this instead. Let's see. Yeah, this should work. Give me a second, guys. I'm just trying to find the best way to display this chart, and I think that a screenshot is probably the best way. Alrighty. Give me a second, guys. Show this. See if I can get a full screen going here. Nope, doesn't look like I can. Let's see. Nope. Alright, good enough. Give me a second and then we'll move on to the final element of today's presentation. Alright. Now, see if I can get this thing. Come on. Okay, this is not working like I wanted. It's fine. All right. So on the x-axis, you have price, and on the y, you have the stake, or I'm sorry, the change in holders. Now, you see this dark area here. That's where price is right now. Because this is 10 cents, this is 20, this is 30, 40, all the way out to 50. And this is where we are right now. Now, something I want you guys to kind of wrap your head around. Price, as we know it, is a function of time and the value of the number, just price. This chart is showing you two variables as a function of time. So it's really a 3D chart. but I'm not displaying it in 3D. I'm displaying it in 2D. But it's really the price of HEX and the change in the holder count over time. And that would be shown through height. So the dark plot, the darker the plot, right, the greater the interest. Now, one thing that's important to understand is that at this point in time, we're out here. Same thing if we look over here. Understand. This is the holder stake account change. Yeah. This is the holder change, and this is the staker change. And this is the point where we're at now, right? Now, in the past, you see the interest at these levels, right? And that's what the dark plots are showing you, right? This is price again versus the current stake account. And this is price versus to the left of that versus the current hold account. Above it was a change. This is the current hold account. Now, note the dark points in these plots, right? Because this is essentially price traveling through time, which is what we've seen. This is price starting at 0 here, then going up to 50 cent, then going down to where we are now. And as you guys can see, the interest is pretty broad because the plots are pretty dark at these points. Same thing over here with respect to the total hold account. Now, this is price versus, excuse me, the change in the staking percentage and the stake percentage. Now, this is kind of hard to see because this isn't really a good image, but you'll see the dark plots down here. All right, and this is, of course, 0 to 50 cent. And this scale is not right. Staking. Yeah. So because this value is not linearly based on time, the activity is happening down here. Now, it's really hard to see. I didn't realize I was even in the way. Sorry about that. But right here, you'll see that dark spot, right? And it's important to remember, we just had a bunch of guys make a whole bunch of guys or girls, I don't know, whatever. Bunch of people making stakes to the tune of probably maybe even 2.5 billion by now in just the past couple weeks, maybe even a few weeks, right? And this is all stuff that's happening on chain. On chain. Let me see if the other is better because I really didn't like the way that was shown. And then we'll move on to, yeah, let's try this. Where'd it go? All right, let me see if I can get this out the way. Doesn't look like I can. All right, well, let's just zoom in on each one. Yeah, this is a crisper look. So again, the staker change, it's going to continue to count upward, right? This isn't going to compress. And that's kind of the main thing to get from these plots is that they're recording time and the change in interest at the same time, right? And that's important to understand. Because right now you're seeing that interest materialize in real time, just like that. So these are the kinds of things that you really want to notice when it comes to an investment, or at least something you might want to perceive as such, right? Because that's ultimately what you want. Right now, let me think of a place to go for this exchange crap. Real, yeah. Now I've gone through this before, but it's really important you guys understand, you know, what's going on, because sometimes these things are just not obvious, uh, but they should be. All right, so we got this site showing us X amount of dollars trading over a 24-hour period. All fine and well. Now let's take this number, 21.78 billion, divided by that number, and let's see what we get. 1 divided by 750. Okay, let's make sure I got this right. All right. So I got a total count of 957,362 Bitcoin traded in the past 24 hours. That's a lot of Bitcoin. Now, let's see what we get for the next round. Ethereum 5940123 divided by 1625. That's good enough. Ethereum had 3.5 million Ethereum traded a day. Alrighty, so now we got those two numbers to play with. Now let's see. We'll take that number of Bitcoin and divide it by the total outstanding number of Bitcoin in circulation, as they state, and we get 5% of that Bitcoin traded, apparently. Let's see for Ethereum. We'll do the same thing and see how much of that traded. And we get 3% of the Ethereum traded. Now let's check Hex. You got 5.2 million. Paltry number in reality. Divided by 0.02. That gives us 218 million hex. And now, as a percentage of the total supply that we can account for, how much is that? 581. 056, 123, 123. Oof. Crazy. All right. Point 0.00037 hex, or percent of the hex is traded. So in essence, less than 1% of the hex is traded. I mean, let's just keep it at that. So you got 5% of the Bitcoin that's traded, 3% of the Bitcoin that's traded, or Ethereum that's traded, and less than 0.5% of the hex that's traded. Really, less than 0.1% of the hex is traded. It's really a lot less than that, but whatever. Who's really going to count that far down, right? But this is important to understand. And I guess let me just show you guys the math. Hold on. Ah, just so you guys can see what the hell I was talking about in the first place. I can't zoom in this crap. I don't know if you guys can see. I don't think you guys can see though. Hey, hold on. Let me put this elsewhere instead. So the first thing I did was I took the quantity of Bitcoin that traded in dollar terms and divided it by the price, the present price we had at that moment in time when I made the division. And that yields a number. That number ended up being this 957,362 number, right, which ends up being transcendental apparently. So then I take that number, which we don't need all this, and we divide it by the outstanding circulating supply of 19.269 3 million. And just do the math again. And that provides us with the 5%, right? So that's number one, 5%. Then the next thing I do is I go to Ethereum and I take their outstanding, yeah, their outstanding dollar value traded for the past 24-hour period and divided by the price at the time, and it gives me a number. That number is 3.6 million, or yeah, 3.6 million Ethereum traded over the past 24-hour period. Simple enough. Take that number, divided by, hold on. Take this number divided by the total supply, which is 274,000, right? And then we get another number, which ends up being 3%. So 3% of all the outstanding Ethereum supposedly traded in the past 24 hours. Now, I haven't gotten to the major point yet. We're just doing the math for now. Now we move on to Hex. So for Hex, we have 5.2 million trade over in dollar terms over the past 24 hours, and at the present price of 2.38 cents, we get a number. That number is 218 million, yada yada, blah blah blah. We're going to put this in parentheses and divide this by the outstanding supply of 581 billion 700 and whatever. Where is it? Here we go. 581 billion 056 million. And we get a number. And that number is this fractional repeating decimal here. And this is why I was floored. I mean, this is way less than 3%. Way, way, way less than 5%. And this is the quantity as a percentage of Hex that traded. Now let's remove the OA, like people like to say. What would that number be? Let's just remove 500 billion Hex. Who cares? That's 25%, right? False. Now, I just removed 500 billion. I basically removed the OA. Still not 1% of the HEX traded. Something to write home about. And something that people need to learn to internalize or try to understand. Because again, you're not doing yourself any favors by trying to understand something like the OA if you don't even understand basic supply demand. Now, here's something we got to keep in mind. Let me find this damn Bitcoin rich list. Now, Satoshi's coins supposedly don't move. You got all these coins that supposedly don't move. Now, Richard talks about this shit all the time. So I don't really even want to beat a dead horse here. But it needs to be said. We're talking about a system, which is the original, which is perfectly fine, where 98% of the coins, I think, are owned by the top 1% of the addresses or something like that. So here are the wallets with, more than 10 BTC. How about that? The wallets with more than 10 BTC number in 140,000. So more than a stake account, but less than the hold account for X. Fair enough. But as a function of all the wallets, or as a percentage of all the wallets, they're not even 0.5%. 0.3. 0.36 of the total, apparently. Now, this mass holds 4.4 million BTC. And that's a claim. Now, that ends up being up to 82% of all the existing supply. This paltry number of addresses. Talk about decentralized. However, the math I just did moments ago showed that a little bit more than this BTC trades in a 24-hour period. What was the number? 900. Oof. Almost a million BTC. Hold on. Okay. So apparently, 98% of the total coins, or the total wallets, excuse me, are holding this BTC, or up to this amount of BTC, excuse me. But this much trades in a 24-hour period. So it begs the question, are these other guys trading that 1 million in the past 24 hours, or who exactly is trading that million hex in a 24-hour period? Because, the claim is it's a store of value, so it shouldn't be this guy's. Because these guys hold up to 98% of the supply. So who's moving that 2.5%? Who's moving that million? That actual 5%, excuse me. Because apparently these guys are moving 2.5, and these guys are moving 2.5. Is that what's going on? Interesting. Not even gonna look at Ethereum because that thing is just a whole pig within itself. I mean, I'm writing a paper right now. I don't know where it's gonna go, what's gonna happen, but I'm almost done with it. I just got to do the math part. And I clearly state, as a matter of fact, I put it on Twitter a couple weeks back when I first wrote that part. Ethereum staking is not cryptocurrency. If you don't have $38,000 or give up your keys, you're not staking that ETH. And then if you stake it, you ain't getting it back. That's not crypto. That's not crypto at all. So these are the lessons that we've learned over the past year. All these centralized points of contact failed. The entire system is setting up for some type of recalibration. Are you prepared? Are you willing to be prepared? Because we have to do the damnedest thing because we don't know how things are going to change. We don't know. All we can do is pretend to think we know, but we actually don't. And I tell you, people are already running into problems here in the U.S. with their bank. And it's like I told you guys many times before, you don't own that. You think you do, but you don't. And then what happens the day that fiat is invalidated? All those millions you might have are no longer worth a damn. What then? These are real questions you got to contend with as a human on this planet. You know them at your own peril. But there are things you should take into consideration. Because time is of the essence. You see what's happening. And if you don't, you might want to take a hard look. Because you're being lied to all day and night. Imagine selling the only asset that's actually really held by graphene hands. I mean, 5% of the Bitcoin supposedly trades. But these people don't actually hold that 5%. So who's lying? Am what I'm explaining making sense? Because you guys really need to understand this. I mean, never mind all the charts. Just look at the shit that they're doing in your face. Things to think about. Only people playing themselves are the ones selling out of Hex. So if you guys got questions, lay them on me. Otherwise, I'm wrapping this up. Give you guys about a couple minutes to get them in there. But this is what's going on. People think these exchanges out here laying down value, and they're not. They're just skimming you. Your persistent participation in the fiat scam is what perpetuates it. Your persistent participation in all scams is what allows them to continue to exist. Oh yeah, it's definitely a bull trap. I forgot to talk about that. Hold on. It's just so obvious. Um, I mean, you got to realize the markets just don't move vertically like that. Um, and Bitcoin was real nasty, right? Bitcoin was really nasty. Look at that. I mean, that thing just didn't even make sense. But it just went vertical, right? And that's kind of how you know that it was a manipulated move. And manipulated in the sense that they really jammed up the volume in terms of fiat into Bitcoin. Not so much into Ethereum, which is interesting, but they definitely did into Bitcoin. Let's do a little measure real quick just to confirm that. And let's go from the 19th to yesterday or the day before. 44%. 19th. I might be wrong. Nope. About equivalent. How about that? Oh, nope. Yeah, less. So 40% in Bitcoin and 44% Ethereum. So they really had to put in some work just to get Bitcoin even to look better than Ethereum, because it wasn't. It fooled me really quick because the move was so vertical. That was a really vertical move, and I guess that's just how they have to make Bitcoin move in order for it to actually look respectable. But yeah, I'm not convinced by this move. But interestingly enough, it's the first time it actually even goes above this moving average I got on my chart. However, given the type of move that it made and how quickly it made it, it makes it suspect. Because, will it stick around? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. But, you know, I don't think so. One thing I do know is that Hex is going to pay me, though. So I don't really got to worry about that. Now, I do hope that Hex keeps shit in the bed. I'm not going to lie. But I don't think it goes lower than 1.5. But we'll see. Hold on, man. All right, let's see if anybody else got any questions. Yeah, nah, not so much that it's cooked, but people are doing stuff and it ain't what you think. That type of thing. Um, like this move, basically, right? Like they really had to put in the work to get the volume in there to make this move look good. Let me see if I got volume on it. Let's go to 233. I mean, look at that. They had to really ram that volume up. They had to. Not an option, because that's the only way they can get it to move like that. And if there's not a lot of sellers, it makes it even harder. So it's an interesting conundrum once you start to grasp what it kind of takes to make this kind of move happen. Because a price can't go any higher than the sellers are willing to sell it at. So somebody has to be on the other side. Hold on. Tell you what, whoever it is giving them a good run for their money, because some dude just did a U-turn in an intersection where he could have went left or right. So they don't know what the fuck is going on out there. Too funny. And I think I just saw a dude doing the do. Huh. Oh well, good luck to him. Anyway, so yeah, you just gotta grasp rates of change. When a rate of change is really vertical and all of that, there's something else going on. So that's why I suspect it's a bull trap. Let's see. That's neither here nor there. It really shouldn't matter. And this is the thing that people do not understand. Why would that matter? If it's really on chain, shouldn't fucking matter. Appreciate it, man. My pleasure. And if anybody's looking for it, HEX.LIVE put link in the chat for the whole thing, the whole history of Hex. All right, folks. Appreciate y'all. Y'all be easy. Thank you again for tuning in. Remember to mind your information sources, because a lot of people tell you market cap matters. A lot of people tell you a lot of things are lies, but it's on you to be able to identify them. Peace. Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. Shit, motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Like yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. I mean, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Y'all deep. Everybody. My God. Hex-Asians, bro. Everybody. Australians, man. Everybody gets me. Yo, when is it?